Good evening. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Finance for Monday, December 18th, 2017 to order. Our first item on the agenda is appointment of vacant position to the Board of Finance in accordance with Section 6.1 of the Guilford Town Charter. Before we do that, I wanted to clarify the process. There was a lot of questions that either came to me or were in the paper regarding this, and so I just want to make sure that the process is clear to the audience. 6.1 is the Board of Finance and talks about the Board of Finance and what our role is, but in Chapter C of the Charter, Chapter 2, Elections and Elective Offices, I just wanted to read what the process is so that we kind of set the stage. And I won't read all of it, I will just read the key points. In 2.5, vacancies in elective offices. When a person vacating a seat on an elective board or commission was elected as a member of a political party, that vacancy shall, if practicable, be filled by a member or designee of the same political party. In C, a vacancy occurring on the Board of Education or the Board of Finance shall be filled within 60 days by vote of the remaining members, but if not so filled, shall be filled by appointment of the Board of Selectmen within 30 additional days. And in E, an appointee to fill a vacancy shall serve for the remainder of the unexpired term or until a successor is elected at a special election called by petition in accordance with the Connecticut General Statutes and qualifies. A person elected to fill an unexpired term shall serve for the remainder thereof. So I wanted to clarify what the process is, and as this item indicates, we intend to appoint, so I would like to ask any nominations regarding the appointment of the vacant position to the Board of Finance.
I'd like to nominate Megan Forgione to the open seat.
Okay.
Like to second?
Any other discussion? All in favor of Megan Forgione Scanlon on the as appointment to the vacant position of Board of Finance indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Megan, come on up. So the next thing that has to happen is, well, now that Megan's here, she has to be sworn in. So to do the honors and swearing in, Jeff Beatty, who is an attorney in town, as most of us all know, will do the swearing in.
Oh, whatever, but, wait a minute, let me in.
Oh.
Wherever you want to go. Put it.
I was going to say.
That's exactly what you should be doing. Perfect.
Good touch.
Hey, optics is
Well done.
everything. All right.
I'm going to let this be about you, so move it.
Raise your right. Do you solemnly swear or affirm, as the case may be, that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Connecticut, so long as you continue to be a citizen thereof, and that you will faithfully discharge, according to law, the duties of the office of member of the Board of Finance to the best of your abilities? So help you God.
I do.
Congratulations.
We don't need to describe her. We're doing.
Well, we could mention it later.
Okay.
Congratulations, Megan. Welcome aboard. Time to get caught up very quickly now.
Yes. Got my notes.
As you have been.
Yeah.
Trying to. Item number 2 on the agenda is a public forum. Anybody wishing to address the Board of Finance in public forum? Okay. Number 3, approve minutes of the regular meeting under 3.1 of November 20th, 2017.
Move their approval?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further comments, discussion?
None here.
I just have one comment. I was not here, so I'll abstain the vote, but at the bottom of page 7, Ken asked a question about the Long Hill Road project, and the answer was that as of September 30th, $2.1 million had been spent, and they have $634,000 left to collect for early design work. In looking back through the special fund warrant pages, as of September 30th, I came up with $2.3 million to trademark plus $390,000 to hacks, which gets me to $2.7 million for the project prior to the additional $710,000 that's included in, I guess it's in this package that we're looking at today. So I don't know what numbers were being referred to there, but I think the number, based on what I look back through, is higher than what is in the minutes. By a fair amount. So I don't know what the context of the 2.1 is, but
Yeah, I think that's something that we could discuss further. I mean, do you want to talk about this?
I don't have that with me tonight.
Okay. Okay.
I'd like to defer that to review of the special fund allocations, because I have some questions about the Long Hill Road project based on reports and special funds.
Yeah,
So
I
if
think
you
that's
want to
fine.
hold on that until
fine. I just saw
We could
that
clarify
subject
that
comes
during
up.
the
To
town.
clarify, because I think we're talking about a $3.9 million project altogether.
let's talk about it.
Yeah, I think we
It's fine.
hold it for the town, yeah.
All right.
It's
When
worth
they're
more
up
than the
here.
minutes.
Anybody else have any comments? Anybody else? On actually same page, on page 7, about the 7th line down, Mr. Gammerman asked about and the number, I believe I did look it up, and it should be $2,841. And I do believe that all the comments and questions that had come up during our meeting were responded to either by Linda or by Mary Jane, so they were all covered in here. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Okay, Ken and Megan abstained.
Yep.
Okay, correspondence. 4.1, Standing Building Committee meeting minutes. Well, I did not attend this meeting. I just wanted to, I guess, go on record and say that I actually do intend on still attending the Standing Building Committee meetings. That's where I cut my teeth, so to speak, and it's a good group, and I like to see that group get to its full complement, and I know that they have a lot of work that's going to be going on, and I think being able to report that to the Board of Finance when I can, I will certainly do. That being said, as I mentioned, I was not at this meeting, but I received the meeting minutes when everyone else did. I did read them, and I would just entertain any comments or any questions that you might have, and we'll see what we can answer.
I have some questions on item 7, on the Baldwin
Second page.
School, second page of the minutes. There was a question as to whether the contractor fulfilled the requirements, and the contractor offered, I believe it's J&G Glass, offered a $25,000 credit for the error that was made in sending the incorrect windows. They then came along, based on the urging of Mr. Gurnham, to accept an additional $5,000 in credit. So now the supplier is agreeing to $30,000 in compensation, you might say. And my question is this acceptable to the board? Did we suffer any quality loss in the supply by J&G Glass? Are we just making best of a bad situation, or are we happy with it?
I guess to paraphrase this, there was a $25,000 credit, and it went up to $30,000 on the request of the Board of
Right.
Ed. So the question,
They quickly accepted
I actually had a very similar question,
Yeah, so
Ken,
did
is
I.
what led that $5,000 in addition?
It's a purely cosmetic issue. The colors were wrong.
Right,
And so for $30,000, we'll put up with it, I think is the consensus.
okay. So there was no real number discussed. When I say number discussed, it wasn't, 25 versus 50 versus, it was just felt that more should be given based on the error that was made.
We viewed it as an area that we should discuss with the bargain, if you will.
Okay. Okay.
So you ask a little further on that?
Yeah, go ahead, Justin.
Mr. Chairman? I just want to clarify, because I read this and I was kind of interested in this. There wasn't really an issue with the egress and the hinges. It's just that the windows are white instead of bronze. Is that
Correct.
accurate? Okay. I
Right.
did understand it. All right, thank you.
So for
Well, there was an
There
issue.
was an
the egress issue they had to straighten out. That's totally
There's
separate.
from what I had heard, there was a fix for the egress issues that would make it
Zero.
make it fine. So that's going to be corrected. And the rest was the cosmetic color issue.
Right. They're two
White's
different.
become our favorite color.
For $30,000, white is fine. You know.
My question is, did J&G Glass take the $30,000 request? I mean, they agreed to it? Do you know?
It was. I'm not sure. It hasn't been.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll find that out the next meeting, hopefully in the meeting minutes.
I can follow up with Cliff Gurnham on that.
We'll either get a discount or we will get what we ordered, one or the other.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have an item on
Go ahead, Ken.
item 8
Yes.
on the Jones roof. A little puzzled here because Mr. Sands is quoted as saying that the question of replacing solar panels and so forth to complete this, the removal of lead-coated copper areas being replaced, the determination had to be made on whether this replacement is necessary and cost-efficient. I just wondered whether there was an update on this.
I'm not sure of it.
I mean, is this still being researched?
I'm sure it would
Are we
be.
proceeding with the roof project?
We are proceeding with the roof project. The conclusion of the Board of Ed at the last meeting was that there is no good reason to remove the gutters, notwithstanding the fact that they do have lead because of the circumstance of where they are, and that this is nowhere near any drinking water supply or anything like that. We went through this at another school. It might have been Lakes, I forget, but we had it fully tested, and there were no health issues whatsoever. So in the absence of any kind of environmental danger, we didn't think it was a good use of money to replace the gutters.
So the board is comfortable with the project as laid out?
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a question about the
John?
overrun on the community center roofing project. I think it was discussed that they might take that from another bond funding source as a transfer.
I believe what the understanding is that the numbers came back much higher than were initially estimated. So there will be additional monies asked in the future bond that will be coming out this year.
Gotcha.
But it is still the intent of having that project completed, I believe, this summer.
All right.
The drawings are well underway, if not just about complete, I believe. So it's just got to go out to bid, and then they'll be ready after the for the next fiscal year, assuming, of course, the bond question is approved. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Pension Committee, 4.2. I did notice that there was not much of a change in the cumulative. Pretty much stayed where it was. Okay. Okay, last call on pension. I would like to add correspondence that I've received, and it's for officiality's sake. And it was both handed to me, and I also received it on November 30th, and it was to me directly, and it says, this is from Matthew T. Hoey III. Dear Mike, effective immediately, please consider this my formal resignation from the Board of Finance. It's been a pleasure serving with you on the board, and I look forward to working with you in my new role. So just wanted to read that into record because it is correspondence that I have received. So.
Sounds like it's actually official now.
It's now official, yes. Okay. Number 5, or item 5, review and accept report of expenditures for the Board of Education for November 2017. Linda and Chairman Bloss.
Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to new members, and welcome back to another member. We are not quite half the way through the budget year now. We are so far pretty close to on track, we believe. Our expenditures for the month of November were a total of $4,691,520.53. We think that at least at this point we are within the approved budget on each of the major items, although obviously subject to changes as the year goes on. I did get a letter today that I wanted to bring to your attention. We got a letter from the Guilford High School Building Committee requesting that the Board of Education close out the project and accept the project as completed on time and, as we are fond of saying, under budget. And so we do intend to vote on that at our January meeting. That is a real milestone in the history of the Board of Ed and really of the town. We have talked some at the Board of Ed level about what to do with the unanticipated, or I guess not unanticipated, but the unbudgeted ECS money that I believe, at least as of today, will be coming to the town in addition to what we had budgeted for. It is obviously not the Board of Education's decision because it is the ECS grants go directly to the town, but it is going to be our very strong advice to this board or the Board of Selectmen or whoever makes the decision that any of those funds in the 2017-18 fiscal year be used not to fund recurring programs or any new programs, but they be used to offer tax relief, frankly, either in the form of the bonds for the high school or pension obligations or both. There will be also in the 18-19 budget year a similar amount, at least again as of today, and it would be our advice and our recommendation to this board to do the same. We should not view that. One of the reasons the state gets in trouble is they fund recurring programs with one-time funds, and we don't think that's a really good idea. So that is going to be our recommendation to this board. That'll be that at least as of today, that's approximately $600,000 in the present fiscal year, 17-18 fiscal year, and at least again as of today, it's approximately the same in next year's budget too. So, but we can talk about that some more. We do have some, I can go through the warrants. There are some, there's not much unusual. There are a lot of the larger items are mostly special education outplacements. We do believe that because of some of the programmatic changes and just because of some timing issues that our special ed outplacements we may be in a position to reduce those significantly next year in the upcoming budget year, 18-19. You will note, if you were reading carefully, that we spent about $3,000 to replace part of the glass canopy at the high school, and you may wonder, what the heck? You know, that's kind of not that old. Well, apparently something hit it, and nobody knows what, and there isn't a video camera that would show that, and there's no rock up on the top that you would think if there was a rock, but something hit it, and it was broken, so we did have to repair that. You'll notice a lot of calls to aerodynamics relating to HVAC work. That is because our HVAC technician is out on workers' comp, and so anytime we have something that's specialized, we have to have that done. And it was just we got an explanation from Mr. Gurnham about what happened, and it was apparently just not anybody's fault. It was just purely a circumstance, an accident where the gentleman got hurt. But we've had to spend some money for emergency calls. There is on the third page, Cardinal Cushing Center. This is a new vendor, from what I understand. This is an outplacement, a special education outplacement. It's a program up in Massachusetts. You'll notice several bills to Connecticut Water, and I don't think this is a big deal, but I just want to raise it just so this board understands. This is for irrigation at several of the various fields, either near the school or connected to the school. Some of these really are not school fields, and we don't, for example, the fields at the upper fields at the Cox School, those are almost never used for school purposes, and nonetheless, they're in our budget. They really ought to be. If you were going to redraw this, they really ought to be in the town's budget. I'm not suggesting you do anything about it. I just want to highlight that that's the case. And this is one of these areas where we really don't. It's all coming from the same pocket, or the same group of taxpayers, and so I don't think it's worth trying to fine-tune this to get to the nickel of, this is Board of Ed, this is town. Well, we do cooperate in some of these areas, and so we are spending Board of Education funds for some of these town functions. You'll notice on page 4, Erase, Brantford Public Schools, that's our statutorily mandated adult ed program. We spend about $91,000 a year, and we do get some money, about $4,500 back from the state on that. We have asked the superintendent to provide us with a report at our next meeting about just exactly what kind of usage we get in that program, but it is a state mandate. The next page I had something on was page 6. There's Has Compliance LLC, which is relating to the annual inspections that we have to do under state law for MSDS and Right to Know for chemicals in the school. Also on that page, there is something I do want to highlight. There's a payment to Jaffe.
I'm sorry. Let me know. I don't see this on page 6. Where are you?
I think
fourth from the top.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I'm working off the Guilford.
it's in the middle of page 7 on ours. It's,
okay, I'm sorry.
Halfway through
I didn't realize we had different formats.
Oh, yeah, they have a condensed version.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, you give them the large print, so, that's great. Is there any reason for that? Or just,
You get both.
I see.
That's okay. Sorry.
Okay. So Jaffe Holden, Jaffe Holden, we are going to have to do a little bit of engineering work at the high school to raise the noise reduction fence at on the side of the building closest to the condominiums, Long Hill Farm. The chiller is a little noisier than we thought it was going to be, and because it runs at night when electricity is cheaper for us, it really needs to be dampened, and so we did have an engineering study of how to do that. You will notice, and that's going to be fine, we're confident that we're going to be able to fix that. You will notice there are a bunch of several items that have to do with things like T-shirts for memorials. Now, those were monies that we advanced and are going to get back relating to a memorial service that we held for Vince Augustine, the former principal at A.W. Cox School. So that actually is not going to use appropriated funds. All set? Okay. There you will notice an NAC Industries. There was some significant classroom renovation work at Adams, both with HVAC and also making some of the basement classrooms usable. There are some tuitions to the Sound School in New Haven Public Schools. There are 3 regular education tuitions that we have to pay some for, and then 3 special ed tuitions that we have to pay at a greater rate because the services are greater. Then the payments to the town of Guilford, and then the UNITE Health program. That is the one bargaining unit right now that is not in our town of Guilford. High deductible HSA, that is an equivalent program that actually the union administers, and we write the check directly to the union. So we, the Board of Ed, the cafeteria workers are not under the Board of Ed health policy. They're under their own union policy, where we reimburse a rate that is equivalent to what we would do if they were in our plan. So, in our experience, I think with the health claims for 2017-18 has been quite positive, and so we will entertain any questions that any members of the board have.
Since you started with the warrants, or you just finished with the warrants, I had questions on 2 warrants. One on page 7, the other on page 8. The one on page 7, excuse me, a $3,500 encumbrance for high school engineering acoustic survey.
That's what I was just talking about.
That was what you just
for the chillers.
And the other was a tuition. You never know about these tuitions, but perhaps we had seen this organization before, but Latham Center's got $21,500 in a monthly for 1 month. Without,
Correct.
not that you're going to say, to betray any confidentiality, but is this an obligation for 12 months or 10 months? It is for 1 month.
Well, it's a month payment. I don't know whether
It's a
that's
1 month
for
payment.
for a month
What is it?
services or whether it's for a quarter. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know if Ms. Trudeau can
I
answer
think
that or
that
not.
one is a full,
Be a residential center?
There are such. I mean, the Cardinal Cushing Center, I know, is a residential program.
Yes,
And that's
yes.
a very expensive program. But
Yes.
No, I believe that's a 10-month.
10 months.
10-month.
Wow. A couple of questions on the spreadsheets. Central office non-certified is up by about 5 points. Insurance is up by 5% as well. And the tuition, we were just talking about tuition at the previous meeting, but the tuition is up by 3% already.
well, not exactly. Are we looking at the last column on the spreadsheet?
Yeah.
See, I'm not a big fan of those two columns because that really is comparing the percentage of the budget that's expended this year compared to the percentage of the budget that was expended last year. It really isn't that meaningful. Really, the more meaningful number would be where were we in terms of the actual last year instead of what the budgeted number was. And now the first column I'm fine with. That's the percentage.
That last
of cover.
column is not a budget, it's percent expended and encumbered.
Sure it is. The last column would be
The last
of
column.
last year's budget.
That's a
Yes, I
comparison.
know that, but it isn't an original estimated figure. It is the amount expended in 16.
Right. I'd like to suggest, though, that it really would be more meaningful to compare what the actuals were for 16 than what the budget was in 16, because the budget, once the year is over, the budget, the more, to me, the more material number, the more relevant number is the actual.
In other words, if the budget got cut in half, then that's going to be very reflective of what the percentage is.
right.
Sure.
That's just a comparison.
Right.
It's relation.
But in any event, I don't think there are any of these numbers that are alarming, and I don't think that
Okay,
any of
good.
these suggest that we are going to be over.
So the central office non-certified that you just asked about is the perfect example for this. Last year, after the budget was set, we reduced a position, but it was still budgeted all year, so our expenses were always lower as compared to the budget. This year, we adjusted the budget to remove that position out, so now the actuals, which are probably very similar to what we spent last year, but the percentages are different because of the change in the budget.
Okay. Just noticed in the, my other question was related to the Board of Ed minutes of November 13th. Dr. Freeman, item 10.2, Dr. Freeman sees as a result of the General Assembly's action that Guilford will see a reduction of grants of approximately $250,000. What will that affect? Do we know?
Well, I don't think it's going to affect anything. This is actually the ECS grants.
Yeah.
If you remember historically, and I'm going to talk in round numbers, historically we were expecting $3 million, well, in last budget year we got about $3 million in ECS grants. They go to the town. They're not reflected in the Board of Ed budget. We got about $3 million, though, in ECS money. We were all anticipating a reduction in ECS money because of the state's budget circumstances. The governor proposed zeroing us out. The General Assembly didn't go along with that, and then when the bipartisan budget was ultimately passed, that budget reduced the ECS grants to Guilford by $250,000. In the meantime, though, we had budgeted for a reduction of $1 million, and so it's never nice to have a $250,000 reduction, but we were anticipating a much greater reduction for this budget year. Since then, though, what's referenced in those minutes, there has been a further deterioration in the state's finances, apparently, and the General Assembly, in the bill that they passed, gave the governor the ability to make $200 million in additional cuts without General Assembly action. He has now cut the ECS grants to all towns, but to ours about another $200,000 approximately. So that's why when I said earlier that we had allowed for $1 million in reductions, where we are right now is approximately $400,000 in reductions, and we're halfway through the fiscal year. So am I going to promise that there's not going to be an additional reduction? No. But where we are right now is that we're in relatively good shape. We're quite good shape compared to where we expected to be with the ECS grant.
My recollection with the ECS was that we took in just under $2.8 million in the prior fiscal year. We budgeted for a reduction of $800,000, not $1 million. The budget that was passed, the 2-year budget, in year 1, I think we stand to lose $250, which doesn't include any additional cuts with the $200 million that you just referred to. And in year 2, it would reduce the ECS by $450. But obviously, we haven't budgeted for year 2 here because that's next year's business. That's what we're going through now.
No, I don't think that's right on any. Frankly, I think we did. It was $3.2 million. We reduced it by $1 million in our budget. I'm quite confident that the 2-year biennial budget of the General Assembly reduced us by $200,000 in each year, not cumulative. I'm quite clear about that. I think what happened is that the governor then increased the reduction by 200 and change in the current fiscal year. And now, would I be surprised if that were to be reflected in the next fiscal year? No. But it is, I have confirmed that where we are right now is approximately $600,000.
For this year?
For this year. But as of today, there is another $200 million that the governor is going to, that the comptroller Lembo says that we need to cut from this budget. At least the chatter around the General Assembly is that they're not interested in further cuts in municipal aid, but we'll see.
And you think the 600 cut is off of a 3.2 base, so you're anticipating 2.6 in ECS for this year then, as of this moment?
Say 2.5 something, or 2.5, right, 2.5 something, right.
Can I get clarification on something? And I'm sorry, Bill, I'm kind of rusty,
That's
so
okay.
it might have went by me.
That's
But
okay.
you kind of implied that we would keep the funding for this year's budget where it is now, and that would yield another surplus in ECS funds. I thought you suggested that we saved about $500,000 this year, and we might save $500,000 next year.
Let's call it that. Well, yeah, I wouldn't say saved, because the income isn't, it's not in our budget. It's reflected on your budget, the town side budget, when the mill rate is set. In other words, you're anticipating X amount of revenue from taxes, the state, permits, everything else. And there's going to be, at least as of today, approximately $500,000 more in income than was budgeted for. Now, I don't know how the other income is holding up and the other revenue sources. Maybe the other revenue sources are
Maybe not.
Matt, would you like to?
I wasn't going to jump in. Let you run away. The conversations are all talking around the same thing. The ECS numbers are correct. However, there were significant reductions in other areas of state funding. So the budget as signed on the 31st of October did call for $2.6 million in ECS money. However, we had reductions in some other areas that offset that. So if I could just for a minute, in the 2016-17 adopted budget, we had a little over $4 million in state revenue, $4,050,000. We anticipated $3,191,000, which was an $860,000 cut, close to the numbers, Ken, that you just mentioned. So the net effect was we were going to receive $3.4 million, about a $560,000 difference, I believe. almost 600,000, I'm sorry. Subsequent activity, the holdbacks and the lapses, which also included the renter's rebate program, have resulted in an additional $430,000 in cuts. We had a discussion, Mary Jane and I will have a spreadsheet that we can share with everybody that shows the line item by line item areas of revenue from the state, and will show what we budgeted for during the current budget cycle, what we had budgeted the previous budget cycle, and the impacts of the state budget that was approved on the 31st of October, as well as the subsequent holdbacks by the governor and the change to the renter's rebate program. So we'll have that out to you guys shortly. Would that be helpful?
Which is why this discussion needs to be had at this level rather than the Board of Education level, because we don't get those numbers.
So I'd just like to add that bottom line, state revenue, we're at a deficit of about $180,000 deficit overall, all revenue, all state revenue, including ECS.
So we'll provide that spreadsheet
So
for you.
I think my question, Bill, though, is that will you keep your expectation for ECS money the same for the 2018-19 budget as you had in the 2017-18 budget?
Well, it really would be a question
Despite-
more to the Board of Finance, because it doesn't come down.
Bipartisan budget.
That's what we,
Yeah. I mean,
we get to.
One thing we'll add to that spreadsheet is in the approved budget, signed budget of 1031, included, it's a biennial budget, so we will put in that number for 2018-2019 budget cycle. Would that be helpful?
Which is just an estimated number.
Yeah, so the broader point is I would expect
it's actually law. Right now, it's law.
So the broader point is I would expect us to put in the ECS amount that is more reflective of the bipartisan budget, in that we really wouldn't have a surplus for the following budget year.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, that's a Board of Finance decision.
understood.
So you made a,
Go ahead, Captain. Yeah.
you made a reference to outplacement tuition going down next year. Is that due to the anticipated people that we expect to age out of the program primarily?
a combination of people we expect to age out of the program and not putting new people in part because of the programmatic changes we've been able to make at the lower grades.
And then your reference, I agree with your reference to you shouldn't have to pay for the water on Upper Cox in particular. I was not in favor of the irrigation. That field is primarily used by a private enterprise, and I think the fee structure by Park and Rec should be looked at. I've said this before, and I've spoken with Rick Maynard, but I do think we undercharge. I don't know whether it's across the board, but in that particular case, the taxpayers footed a large bill for irrigation, and that field is, to the best of my knowledge, used primarily by a private entity.
I will leave that to you, gentlemen and ladies, to move as you view appropriate.
How about a few questions about where we seem to be doing pretty well? I was looking at the unemployment compensation line, and I was wondering if that's timing, or we're just really having lower claims, or...
Just lower claims.
Oh, nice.
Which, by the way, when we talk about potentially laying off people, that line goes up.
I mean,
Bill, explain one thing to me. You said that the numbers are, you can't really compare this year or next year to last year. Yet Linda, in her cover note on tuition, I hate to revisit it again, but plain is the writing on this report that the percentage of the budget expended is higher than the prior year. You said it's not.
No, I didn't say that. What I said is I think the percentage expended of the budget is not a particularly meaningful number where we're talking about the last year's budget is already done. I think it's appropriate to compare actuals for the past year, but why we're comparing the percentage of the budget expended when the budgetary number, especially in the special ed area, is so volatile.
It is volatile, but is it higher than last year or not? I mean,
in dollars?
Linda's saying that it
percent
is.
but the
The
reason
percent
for
is.
it is
Yeah, the
based
percent
on what the
expended
budget was in the first place.
of the
Okay.
budget may be higher,
I
but
think I
you know,
follow.
I kind of think dollars are more significant
Yeah.
than the percent.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
my personal opinion.
It's a comparative number. You know, whether you have to take it with a grain of salt, and you have to do a little bit of research and investigation on what the budget number was.
It's clarified for me.
But we're okay. The bottom line is, we
okay.
think we're okay,
Right.
subject to something else happening. Last year,
Or
we
as
had some
Dr.
people
Freeman
move in.
said, subject to who moves in.
Well, and which happened last year. We had some in-placements, some
Yep.
people move into town and then immediately are outplaced.
Or a student who's already in there gets diagnosed with a special need and.
That happens,
Yeah,
sure.
right.
Linda, you noted that the pre-K tuition, you got it's a small collection for pre-K tuition. What are we collecting for pre-K tuition generally? What do we know?
We looked at
You
that.
identified an $800 item here.
Right. It's, in total, I want to say it's roughly $35,000 total for the year. They pay in installments, and so sometimes there's that one person that pays a little different timing than everybody else, so that's why it's an $800 installment. We
Okay.
haven't looked at that in
We haven't looked at it. We looked at we looked at that fairly carefully 2 or 3 years ago to try to make sure that the tuition for the non-special ed children, and does everybody know what this program is? This is the program at Lakes for pre-K, where half are special ed kids that we are required to offer the program for, but then half are regular ed because it's supposed to be a hybrid model. We're allowed to charge tuition for the regular ed children. We have looked at it fairly carefully to make sure that it's in line with what would be at a private pre-K. Because it's a good program. It's a really good program, actually.
No doubt.
And so we haven't looked at it in a couple of years now. Might be time to do that again, but we were pretty comfortable where it was last time we looked at it. It's not a huge dollar item, obviously.
Okay. Good.
How are we doing with the, we're now in year 2 of the new high school. I saw an expense of about $13,000 for the electric at the high school. Do you have a better sense as to what the electric costs
We're
are
actually
for
in
that
year,
building?
year 3 of the high school.
Oh, okay.
We're 2.5.
Okay.
Time flies when you're.
But just in terms of forecasting for
Yeah.
the upcoming budget, do you have better?
Well, we did get some comparative numbers. It's a little hard to compare one to the other because there are so many things that operate by electricity in the new high school that weren't in existence in the old high school.
No, I'm talking year to year with the new high school, so you can
Oh, year to
forecast
year, yeah.
for next year.
So we just looked at what we spent for the high school last year and compared to what we had budgeted, what we were planning on. So we're getting a better feel for it. So we will be adjusting the budget accordingly for next year based on our usage and what we've paid.
I know year 1 was, the new world, so you really couldn't have a sense as to what it was, but hopefully now
We
you've
seem
got a
to
better.
be getting, hopefully getting a tighter budget actual for next year.
Okay, great.
I just have one question. On page 12, about the GHS roof repairs, there were some
Oh, yes.
roof repairs.
There were. Apparently caused by things like people dropping things, not any flaw, but more human error.
Okay. Any other questions for Linda or Bill?
I had a question about the computer software running high. Maybe you guys have been talking about it over the last few meetings, but I was just curious if we know why or some timing issues.
Really talked about that one. The biggest part of that is our Munis financial software has always been billed quarterly in the past, and now it's annual, and the town has billed us for our annual portion.
So part of the town warrant was $35,000 to the town from us for the Munis.
Okay,
software.
understood.
So
That's
that might be a
probably-
timing
Yeah,
issue.
so that's a big chunk of it.
And there's also actually on the Naviance, there's a pretty large expenditure for Naviance software. That's the guidance software at the high school.
Okay.
And that's about
College prep kind of software?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Any more takers? Okay. Do we have a motion then to accept the reported expenditures for the Board of Education for November 2017 for $4,691,520.53?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Recusals?
This number here is
Okay.
4986.
Number 6, review and approve reported expenditures for town government for November 2017. Mary Jane, floor is yours.
I have a couple things to report before I get into the revenue and expenditures. Our audit is complete. It had been my initial goal to have it ready for this meeting, and I'm missing it for about 2 days. So the audit will be provided to OPM by the end of this month as required, and it will be available and for you as soon as I receive it. And I have Bloom Shapiro coming in January to your meeting to report. The other thing I have for your reading pleasure when you have nothing else to do is the 5-year capital plan books. I have them for you to pass them out at the end of the meeting.
You don't want to carry them out of here?
No, I had to
like to
carry
have
them up, so I would like to go out with an empty box. So just as a reminder, that meeting is Wednesday for anybody who can attend, starting at 8:30 and probably go up till about noon. So hopefully some of you will be able to attend. All right.
Revenues?
What's that?
Revenues?
Revenues first, sure. We are just about 42% through the fiscal year. Our revenues coming in at 53.6% right now, as compared to 53.4% last year. So we're tracking favorably compared to last year. A couple of things we've already talked about on here, but I'd just like to note that the tax collection is higher this year compared to last year, because if you remember, we did receive a substantial amount of advanced tax payments this year, more than we've seen in quite a few years. So that brought that number up significantly. Engineering and Public Works is up, primarily due to some of the projects that people have out. The road inspection fees are over budget already. We've brought in more at this point, and so they've been doing a lot of work during this time period. The state revenue, you'll see that we did receive our first payment of ECS, $587,000, which is showing 31% of the money in, but it's the budget isn't exactly the right budget, so that percentage is going to skew, and we're going to see that year after year now. I do show 0 brought in this month for other state revenue, but I would like to report that we have received about $400,000 in other state revenue. So as promised, the state has released some of their money. It's about a month later than we normally get it, but that's actually a little bit sooner than I thought we might. So that you'll see in the next month's report that money starting to come in.
Any questions on revenue?
How about a question about the town clerk? Should we triple our recording fees, or?
They're statutory.
Is that anything to be concerned about, or
That it's a little lower?
timing?
Not really. It's really is a roller coaster in the town clerk's office, as opposed, depending on when,
Okay.
It's a pretty deeds are changed.
Big piece of revenue, actually.
Yeah, it is. It is.
There's prior year's taxes seem to be pretty a good collection on that too, unless I'm misreading this.
No, absolutely.
In addition to the prepayment,
Correct.
we're getting past year's taxes as well, right?
Exactly. We got a significant amount of them last year, actually more than I had anticipated, which brought my revenue projections for tax collections. My projection at the end of the year was too low, and it had a lot to do with prior year tax collections that I had not anticipated coming in. So Guilford residents are paying their bills.
Okay. Move on to expenditures.
Similar story on the expenditure side. For the town side, we are 54.8% spent as opposed to 54.9% in the prior year. Again, right on track. Not much fluctuation in the different departments that we haven't talked about in the last couple of months. If anybody has any specific questions.
I do. On legal, legal you show about 13% higher than last year, and virtually all of it is part-time. We didn't budget for any part-time help in legal, but if you look at the detail of 109, you've got over $5,000, about $5,500 in there.
Yeah, I think I reported on that last month as well. We did have a change in personnel in that area, and at one point we did have to have temporary person in, so that was that. But you'll see the large expense is labor. We do have one of our contracts that are going through arbitration, so our labor costs will be higher now, and they will start to drop off as we go further, into the year. So the majority of that difference, I would attribute to more legal fees the first part of the year than we had last year.
Yeah.
Correct, more than last year. At this same time, I should say. Last year at the same time.
Warrants? Good.
Any specific questions?
I have a bunch of warrants. Couple of things.
If you're ready, Ken, go ahead.
Oh, the time. What is page 15? UAS Ground Training Flight School? Are we financing a Guilford Air Force?
Well, actually, Charlie told me it was a helicopter, and I just promised if I paid the bill, I was going to be the first one to ride in it. But actually, it's drone training.
Drone training? Okay.
Yeah, Kerma, our insurance coverage carrier, requires training for drones. We have them. I believe the school has them as well. I believe some of the school employees were at that same training, so that's what that is. But it was more fun to think we were getting a helicopter, but that went over quickly.
It's a fun category.
The town wants a helicopter.
You got one to sell, huh?
We do indeed.
Page.
About the fire hydrants?
Certainly.
So I guess we have 5 fire hydrants, and they're about $40,000.
Well, we have a number of fire hydrants. I want to say 318, but I'm not sure if that's right. But it is indeed that much every month.
Now, do we need all those fire hydrants?
That is not a question I am even going to pretend to answer.
It's a bit of money for fire hydrants.
Yeah, it is.
And
It's regulated. It's a regulated cost.
It's going to grow when Mulberry Point comes online. And is a reminder that a good portion of Guilford is on wells. So the number really is astronomical if you consider the size of Guilford and if they were all on city water.
That's a question for someone else.
Okay.
But that is the cost every month, and it does go. It is regulated costs, so it's not
If you could
something
just
we can negotiate.
buy the one near your property, you could paint it any color you wanted.
It's to the water. You don't own it's to the water company to maintain the pressure. It is a shakedown, but it is what it is.
Anything else on warrants?
Yeah, page 7. This $29,500 to Dell, is that leasing fees, or what is that? Page 7.
Oh, page 7. No, these are capital, budgeted capital items. The $15,000 was to replace an outdated Windows server, and the 14,000 was to replace PCs on our standard replacement plan. So that was all approved, budgeted through the 5-year capital plan.
8 units there? Is that correct?
Yes.
But a large portion of that was a server.
It was 15,000 of
Half
it
of
was
it,
the
yeah.
server, if you see that,
Right.
yes. And it replaced a server that was no longer being supported by Windows. You'll see another one in the new
My
5-year
last
plan.
question. Could you explain on page 21 what services we're getting from New England Geosystems?
Oh, that's our mapping software.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on from warrants, if there's nothing else. Medical benefits.
We got the funds, special funds.
Well, I skipped
Just
over
assume those were
warrants.
all warrants,
I
yes.
assumed the warrants were including the special fund, but do we want to go back to the special fund at all?
Yeah, I had a question about it because back to what Ken had raised earlier in the minutes, if you look at the special funds, the Long Hill Road project, we appropriated $677,000 this month. Last month, it was $282,000, so it's moving along. And the total on this project, I believe, is $3,940,000
Yeah,
for the whole
approximately
project, of which $500,000 is Guilford budgeted monies. So my question is, where are we with this?
And also, this project went from 2 million to 3 million to 4 million estimate, but we were told 3 months ago at a Board of Finance meeting that the number, and it was written in a piece of paper we got, that the project was going to be $3.3 million, I believe.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, and so the 3.9, if that is...
That
I don't know
includes the
where-
500,000 from the town. It was, according to this, to the multi-year report, the original budget had 500,000 from us and 3.4 from the grant. So
I thought we were only paying 10% from, wasn't this project 10% town and 10% state and 80% federal or something like that?
Yes, it was 10, 20,
10,
70
10,
maybe?
10 and 80, I think it was.
Yeah. We'll get you a definitive answer
I
on
believe the
that.
500,000 was put in for startup, because we paid I mean, I wasn't here when that was first done, but,
I don't know where Ken's getting the 3.9, but I was pleased when I heard that the number had gone from 4 down to 3.3, but if we're back up to 3 I don't understand why there's so much variability in the number to begin with, frankly.
Well,
Okay, actually,
Yeah, go ahead.
it says the original budget was 500,000. And then it comes up with grants or other funding is 3.4, with a revised
Right.
budget of 3.9. So that original budget of 500 doesn't have anything to do with the percentage of what the town pays. It's just the original budget that was allocated for it years ago, when it was first dreamed up as a project during the 12-13 fiscal year.
right, I was.
So
I was
500 was the
assuming to
initial amount that was,
cover initial
back then, I
payments.
think it was just a placeholder for it, and then obviously the project grew in scope, what needed to get done, and that ended up in being grants for 3.4 because that was the additional scope that was added by the state to bring it up to the levels that it need to be.
Similar to that it was a placeholder because we always anticipated our costs would not exceed 10%. So I think that 500,000 was an
10%
estimated number at the time.
Yeah.
We will get back and definitively determine what the overall budget cost is. And Mary Jane and I actually talked about this earlier. The information Ken has been asking for in accounting, we will have that produced probably for your January meeting.
Was this our last payment? Are we done now?
I don't know, that would be a
No.
Mary Jane question.
We're not done.
I don't believe so. I wasn't giving that in the.
And wait,
it wasn't
and
given-
let's remember something. We make payments in anticipation of reimbursements from the feds and the state. So that was one
That
of
was
your
what we were
original
going to,
questions.
and it looks like, based on the material that we got now, there's we're still anticipating $650,000, I think is what you put in here somewhere.
Well, as of...
That was as of September 30th, so we're
Oh,
2
right,
months,
right,
right,
we're 2 months beyond that now. So.
Your report in September
Right.
of the multi-year capital projects had the total expenditures to date of $2.8 million. And then, we picked up the two figures that I mentioned in November and in December.
Yeah. I don't have them in front of me, so I'm assuming
I went back, I gave you the numbers. I looked back through the warrants, and the warrants, I came up with it, and right now, we've spent $3,376,000 so far. At least that's what I saw in the warrants going back. That's the board, this board has approved $3.4 million on it so far.
We'll pull a reconciliation together.
That sounds right.
It does sound right, because...
As of right now, if this is September 30th, 2 more months worth of payments.
The 2 months added up,
That
added
would make
another $900,000.
As of September 30th, I came up with a very different number. I told you that. I came up with
As of September 30th.
2.7 million as of September 30th, not 2.1. Again, just looking through the warrants, that's what this board has approved as of September 30th, is 2.7 million. That includes the HAX payments, which is the engineer, right?
Yeah.
We'll
get that.
We'll have the detail in January.
Yeah,
Yep.
need an update on that.
Yes, you will.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I just don't understand how, again, I've been skeptical of these projects. Who controls them all? Who's in, is it Portly how does this all get billed, and how do we know that, how does a thing go from 2 million to 4 million back to 3 million, and now, and we don't know where it is? I don't understand that.
It does. The final contract was bid out. The town entered into a contract with the contractor, and that is what we are obligated to pay. That much, unless there are change orders, of which I am not aware that we've had any to the project.
So
this
what is
discussion
that
about
contract? I know, but what is that contract about? Why does the amount seem to fluctuate?
I don't think
it went from
I don't think
2
it,
to 3 to 4. It was in the paper.
I don't.
It was 4, and then we were all pleased when we heard it was 3.3.
Right.
Which I don't understand.
Right. To quote an oft-used term these days, not everything you read on the internet is actually the truth. The issue is we engaged with a contractor for a finite amount of money. I think there's a lot of confusion. When this project was originally projected, there was you yourself have talked about, there was a $4 million number. I don't know where the $2 million number came from. That's one I never heard of. But
that was the original estimate that was given at a presentation when it first came out.
Right.
It was and I asked Jim about it, and he did say that it was just a ballpark number. It wasn't based on
any
it
bid
was a guess.
documents. Right. And again, let's not forget, this is a traditional problem with municipal financing of capital projects, is that we can't determine what it's actually going to cost until we go out to bid. We can have estimates. We don't engage in the engineering work. We don't hire firms to design and develop specs until such time as the project has been approved by the voters with an estimate of what those costs are going to be. It's a classic flaw in municipal finance.
And I would suggest, and we saw it to some extent with the high school as well. We kept saying, "Are we almost done?" And then Mary Jane, you put together a sheet of anticipated expenditures that we still had remaining because we kept saying, "Are we done yet? Are we done yet?" When we were making the payments to O&G and to Fusco. It would be nice at inception to have this, whatever the contractual amount is of 3.4 million, so that when we are approving the 677 and the 77 and the 133 and the 289, that we have a running tally, and that's what we were asking for, a few months ago, so that we know where we are relative to the budget and that this is in line with what the original project cost was to be. And it got at, with the high school, it was even more difficult to keep track of because nobody had a clue as to how much we'd actually paid to O&G, to Fusco, and on a month-to-month basis. And I think if you had the
building committee knew. The building committee was aware of all those numbers. Now, whether we got those numbers or not,
we always were confused. As a board, I would argue that we were always sort of in the dark here, and you were the liaison, the contact. But I would suggest that when we have projects of this ilk, that it makes it much easier, at least for me anyway, to know how much we've spent year to date on it and how much we have remaining, and then you know. and you know if it's over budget or under budget or, you know, where you are.
I'll add one point to that. It's not necessarily just year-to-date, it is project-to-date.
The project to date, that's what I mean.
That'd be
Yeah,
better.
project to date, agreed.
Yeah, absolutely, because the payment recs we get, you know, show obviously the retainage and the balance of the contract amount, so it's all right there.
So we'll get some
In January,
numbers on where we are.
Right.
January,
Together
January.
a complete, you know, running balance of all the payments for this project. Not a problem.
Good.
I lost track of where we were. Okay, we're on
Warrants.
warrants. We're on warrants.
No, we
Okay.
want special
Warrants.
fund.
Special funds, special fund, warrants, okay.
$4,000.
That's why it took me a second. I was like, okay. yeah.
$4,000 did go to you. Yeah, it did. For easements, yeah. No, I know, you're in there, I know. I'm not saying I'm bad. No, it's all good. No, you shouldn't be. It's all good.
Anything else on special? Ken, did you have it?
Yeah, I had one thing, I just didn't understand it. We paid a legal firm, I think Pullman and Conley, about $3,000 for their services on a deep notice, DEEP notice of violation related to Old Quarry Road and Tuttle's Point. What did we do?
We had
What was our violation?
we were doing a project at Tuttle's Point. I think it was raising.
Raising
Yeah, Old Quarry
You have to
Road.
bear with me. I don't even know the roads.
This is
so-
before you.
Yes, I
Yeah.
know. So they were raising the road, and we needed to go further into the encroachment area than our original permit allowed.
I see.
So we had to go back, and they considered that violating our original easement. So we just had to go back and reapply for a new easement for that. So we went further in. Any more detail, I'd have to ask somebody else, but that's...
Is that,
Reflecting it correctly, DEEP will occasionally take a look at projects once they've been completed, particularly as they relate to wetlands. And my understanding is it's a couple of things. The support structure was extended beyond the original footprint. In addition, the containment area did extend out further than they did. So DEP came down. When they did their inspection, they cited us. We engaged Pullman and Conley to work with them for the mitigation of that fine, and we have since settled with DEP on that program, on that violation. And I will also say that DEP will be looking at other projects, and I won't add any comment beyond that at this point.
the settlement amounts, that doesn't appear in, that never appeared in here, I don't think.
No, it is not.
Will it ever?
Yes, it will.
Anything else on special fund? Should we now move on to medical benefits?
Let's do it.
We'll give it a shot.
Go to medical.
And as we saw, it was a good month.
It was a good month. December, we were down. There is an issue still between Anthem and is it United Healthcare? Contract negotiation that they're still working on, so they're holding back some payments, but it shouldn't be a significant number to change that. So we are seeing our numbers going down, which is what we had hoped and anticipated through the HSA. So that has been working well for us. We do have a couple of claims that have gone into the catastrophic claim category, and we currently are showing $164,000 worth of claims being covered in that area as well.
What's the stop loss again? Before it reaches the catastrophic claim? I mean, how much does the town pay before it goes to
$150.
150? Thank you.
Anything else on medical? Okay, permits. Trending better than the last few years.
It is, it is.
What happens when you turn your agenda over? I think that covers everything for town.
I need you to approve the expenditure.
I'll do that. Just want to make sure there was nothing.
Okay, all right,
Nothing
just-
else to go over.
I thought you were moving on from the.
No. Don't worry. I'll release you.
Just reminding you, that's all.
Yeah, you can't leave here without that. So, all right. If there's nothing else for the town, do our motion to approve the report of expenditures for town government for October 2017 for the amount of $2,093,465.
So approved, so moved.
Second.
All in favor? Wait. Discussion.
That's the last one. That's October's number. November's number is $2,040,787.
2,040,000.
Oh, you know what I
Pass this over
did?
to Mike.
I apologize. You know what I did? I took the folder from last time.
It's okay.
Here it is.
No, and I'm gonna, let's see how my number was on this one.
Here.
Oh, it's right here.
You can give us
Yeah,
50,000
it's right here.
more. I
See,
can
it's right here.
certainly
I
spend
turned it and I was looking at the wrong agenda. I was looking at last month's agenda. This is
I don't
gonna,
need
this
I
is
don't
gonna have, this is
necessarily
gonna be a few bumps in a row. This is gonna
It's
happen
okay.
once in a while. All right,
okay.
here we
It's
go.
why I'm watching you.
Let me, we'll take back that motion. Let's try another one. How about if we approve the report of expenditures for town government for November 2017, not October, of $2,040,000 and 780. I did it wrong. $2,040,787.
All right, sounds like you got it out.
Did we
I'll
get it?
second that.
You got it?
That's correct.
All right. Any further discussion? Did I get it right? Yes.
Moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Recusals?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Keep my voice here. Here we go. All right, committee reports. I am going to actually just mention a couple different things, but I'm going to start off with the fact that we did have a joint Board of Education and Board of Finance subcommittee meeting this evening. Most of us were in attendance. Most of the Board of Ed seemed to be in attendance. It was a very good meeting. Ken, do you want to report back on that as our
If I can
liaison
make
chair
sense
of
of my
that?
notes, I'll be happy to report.
Yeah, give it
on
a shot.
that. Okay.
We'll fill in as we
It
need.
was a very good meeting, a very good, far-ranging meeting. You know, it's a tribute to the process. We've been doing it for so many years, and we do the first meeting without paper, and the second meeting with a lot of paper. This year, the second meeting, just to get ahead of ourselves, will include both your bonding and your budgetary paperwork, and that's going to come into us from after your internal meeting of January 3rd or 4th, and then we're meeting again with them on January 16th. And that's when we'll be looking at the papers. But I'm assuming, Linda, that we'll be getting that paperwork closer to the 4th than to the 16th.
Right, you'll receive it on the 4th.
We'll receive it on the 4th. Okay, that's good.
And this paperwork will be the superintendent's.
Basically, the major points that were made, we as a Board of Finance asked a lot of questions. The board seems preoccupied with a number of issues, an upcoming bus contract, which they assume will be higher. That's going to inevitably be higher. There are a couple of potential bidders who are not going to participate in the process, so that will be there. Enrollment is pretty much stabilized. There is the board reflected on the drop in ECS grants. The pension changes seem to be under control. There seem to be two major areas of capital and bonding. I must say that I evidence a little confusion myself as to how much of this is going to fall into the new contract that we are negotiating, or not us, but that the Board of Education,
The Energy Performance
and
Contract.
the Board of Selectmen, the performance contract. But the estimates so far on capital and bonding is HVAC at Baldwin for between $4 and $5 million, and HVAC at Jones for between $2 and $3 million. There are no major changes structurally in the way the Board of Ed will operate in the new year. They are not planning any major initiatives. The one initiative that is under study and will probably be reviewed over the course of the year is the start time at school. And that basically affects the high schools, and whether that will be moved or not is not going to happen anytime soon, but it could very well happen in the next fiscal year. The high school start times. It would only affect the start times in the high school. Although there'll be some adjustments, they estimate in music and art at the elementary level, and there seems to be no major curriculum initiatives. They feel although they could always use more academic coaches, they're going to stay where they are on that. And I think that was basically it. Let me see if I missed anything over here. I think that basically covers it. And there was generally the consideration on the long term as to what may happen with the configuration at the middle school level with Adams and Baldwin, the old thought of a north school and a south school handling that whole middle grade situation to control costs and reconfigure the academics involved in those two levels from 5 to 8. That's going to keep them busy this year. And I believe that they are estimating, stop me on this, Linda, if I got it wrong, a total loss of about $800,000 in ECS grants.
Well, the ECS grants don't go to us. They are part of the overall budget. They're really budgeted on the town side.
Okay. But that's the number that we're looking at.
We're hearing,
Fluctuating all the time.
yeah, there's some differences in that number.
But the superintendent expressed confidence all the way around. He said we anticipated the changes and really have compensated in a way that other school districts have not. And that's my report.
We're in much better shape than a lot of other
Yes.
school districts. The only thing I would add to it is the Board of Ed is juggling a lot of different issues. I don't think that there's any, we're all hearing about the school start time, but that also is dealing with a number of other issues that could, what we kept on hearing is that the study that is being done right now is looking at to do the best possible scenario with a neutral cost, as much of a neutral cost as possible. So that in and of itself is going to be a challenge. But then there's also the contractual obligations that the school system has that, as we all know, is in the number of about 80 to 85% of the Board of Ed budget, and those are numbers that are going to have to be dealt with. So it will be a very interesting season, but the Board of Ed was a very, very good meeting. I think we all learned a lot about what they're dealing with this year, and we will continue to do that. So anybody else want to add anything to that?
Yeah, maybe just add a little bit. I thought it was very sobering that they were concerned about the future of state revenue and the ECS grant going forward. They also gave us a little bit of news. I think the wording was that they don't expect a spike in special ed population. I think they did mention, though, that with the current contracts with teachers, they're expecting probably a 2 to 3% increase, driving factor being the increases in salary. I think they also mentioned the possibility that some special ed costs may be dropping off over the next couple of years.
There's some aging and grading out, which will be helpful.
Yep. And then I'm a little concerned about the start time, but they definitely looking at an approach that's going to be budget neutral, so
Yeah.
I found that encouraging.
Anybody else have anything to add?
I just thought it was
Jeff, go ahead.
a productive discussion. It was nice of them to invite us there, and we were able to exchange our concerns and get information from them as to what their thought process is as they're preparing their budget. So
Yeah.
I look forward to receiving it from them.
On January 4th. I did want to just mention, because I think it's the more we mention dates, the one thing I didn't mention, I will go to this, but the Board of Ed public hearings on the budget will be January 22nd and 23rd, 7:30, Adams, chorus room. That's usually where it is, okay. Michael's got it. So I want to make sure I get that out there. And then the town workshop meetings because we're on committee reports. I'm sure that there was a time where we would divvy that up. We would say who's going to town and who's going to the Board of Ed. I don't think we really need to do that anymore. We're all pretty much invested in the Board of Ed discussions, and we're all invested in the town discussions. So I did want to mention the dates if I could, because I don't have them yet, but the town workshop meetings, have we set those dates yet and times?
The ones with, you mean when the board, the department
workshops,
heads.
department workshops.
tentatively set right now for January 17 and, I don't know if it's 17 and 18 or 18 and 19. It's a Wednesday and a Thursday.
It's usually on a Wednesday and a Thursday.
Yeah,
so. Okay. And those are usually starting, they kick off at 8:30 and go all morning, usually.
Last year, I think they were in the afternoon.
Wait a minute. I think you're right. One of them, you're right. One of them was in the afternoon, and then the next one was in the morning. So
it depends how we can get the board together.
Right. So I mention these because, of course, the Board of Ed is, public hearings, and those workshops, department workshops, are also public meetings. So I just want to make sure I got it out there that those are the dates that we're looking at. And I'm sure it's all on the website anyway, both in the schools and the town. It'll be posted.
Could you repeat those school dates?
The school dates, again, 22nd and 23rd of January, 7:30, Adams Middle School course room.
Both at Adams.
Yes. Okay.
Just to confirm, it's the
Sure.
17th and 18th of January.
Okay. Do we have the timing of it? Afternoon, morning, or not yet?
No.
Because you've got to coordinate with all the
They're tentative at the moment.
tentative. Okay. So noted. Okay. Old business. I was going to mention that we were going to receive the audit next month, but you've already done that. But I did want to mention, just under old business, this board I had reached out to regarding the energy performance contract. I think it'd be a good idea just to mention that that was approved by the Board of Selectmen this morning. And the Board of Ed had a meeting at 6 o'clock this evening that they also have approved that contract. I did reach out to all the board members, and I did receive comments. I shared them with the First Selectman's office. I was told by members of Johnson Controls, and I always do this with their ECG. There's all these acronyms, I get them mixed up, but ECG, that they did receive those questions, and they actually had responses for them. That was told to me by one of the representatives at the 6 o'clock meeting, and that he would be happy to share them with me. So, but I know the Board of Selectmen and I know the First Selectman's office did get those questions, and they were shared. So, Matt, do you want to just?
Yeah, Mike. I guess you gave up on the Giants early yesterday because you sent that email at 3:30.
If only I was a Giants fan, but we won't go any further with that one.
But we did share this this morning with the other members of the Board of Selectmen. Gave it directly to Cliff Gurnham and the representative Aldo, I'll butcher his name, from ECG, and Aaron from Johnson Controls, and they promised they would get back to us with answers on this. Some of these were similar to questions the Board of Selectmen raised and submitted to them, and we received answers on those as well. So, but we'll be happy to share this as soon as we get it back from them.
Okay. And I do want to thank the Board of Finance members for looking at it and providing the comments to that, because every little bit of getting the questions answered is helpful for everyone. Go ahead, Ken.
So the $6 to $8 million of capital needed for the HVAC upgrades at Baldwin and Jones are not included in this project.
I understand the price will come down because of the energy performance contract. So the original number was what?
Yeah, and the meeting we had before with the Board of Ed, they mentioned that the $4 million project was originally around $5 million, but because of their energy performance, it was brought down to $4 million. Round numbers,
Yeah,
obviously.
Because of their purchasing ability, presumably.
Right. You raise a good point, Ken. While those two pieces were not part of this particular project, there are future capital projects that the Board of Education would have to engage in, somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 million, I think, over the next couple of years. Cliff Gurnham's going to get something definitive on that, but because of what we're doing with energy performance contracting, there are a couple of items that we would normally expect to have to expend capital, which will not need to be expended. So in addition to the nominal over 20 years positive cash flow, there are some cost avoidance projects. There are projects for which we will avoid having to expend money over the next 5 years. And we'll get a definitive number on that at some point. And remember, 80% of the savings come from the Board of Education operations, 20% from the town. And I might as well take advantage of it. There were a couple other things. One thing that came up during the Board of Selectmen was how can we be guaranteed that we're going to get the savings? There are two things. You may remember from the discussions, it is no longer says at Johnson Controls discretion. They will make up the difference between the projected energy savings and the real energy savings. That is now they will, is no longer at their discretion. And Johnson Controls has to post an $11 million bond in the event that they default or unlikely go out of business. So we would be able to get a judgment against them for those numbers, and they will be.
Anything's possible.
They will be posting that.
Well, that was one of my concerns, is that what's the town's out if something happens with Johnson Control.
Right.
That's good.
And I want to add one more point. I promise this will be the last, so everybody can get home and watch Monday Night Football. But there was some sense of urgency to this decision window. I know it's been kicked around for 2 years. I think you last addressed the Board of Finance. I think it was in May timeframe when they were in here presenting to us, May or June. Forgive me if I'm wrong. But the Board of Education had engaged the service of a firm, Kohler Ronan, to do a review of the project that came back favorably. The reason that it got rushed through over the last 2 to 3 weeks are provisions in the pending tax reform legislation in Washington, which would significantly impact the ability to do municipal lease financing, would drive the rates up by, and you probably know this better than I do, on the order of 20%, because the tax credits would no longer be available to those entities. So that created this window of urgency that the Board of Education acted on 2 weeks ago, I believe it was.
This is the ZREC bonds specifically?
No, this is municipal lease financing.
Okay.
No longer able to pass along tax credits.
Thank you. For this. I knew you had a little bit more information. It did go fairly quickly there at the end, but we had been discussing it for quite a while. I know the building committee's been discussing it for at least 3, maybe even more years, about that whole, the idea of EPC.
Right. And on that side of the table, it sometimes seemed odd to me that the Board of Finance does not get the opportunity to weigh in on a rather significant investment in a project of that type, but it is statutorily protected in much the same fashion as the Board of Education does their annual municipal lease or their lease for technology. And I lied one last piece. The Board of Education also passed a resolution that obligates them to pay 80% of the lease payments on this project. So the town is responsible for 20% and the Board of Education for 80%, and that is contractually obligated now.
Does this take effect immediately?
The project will be kicked off probably within the next 3-4 weeks. They will. Once the contract, I was authorized to sign a contract with JCI. They're going to move forward, and also authorized to enter into the agreement with it's Bank of America for the finance. They were the only firm to bid on this particular project, and there's one other consideration. They will be ordering the solar panels relatively quickly because of significant concern for the possibility of tariffs being imposed on the import of solar products into this country. The new administration has talked about those kind of things, and it appears to be a significant threat, which would drive the cost of those panels up substantially as well. So you combine those two.
Expended this budget cycle, and if so, how will you fund them?
No, it will not. It will not. The lease financing will not take place until one of the payments due on that.
I don't have a definitive date, but we'll be able to.
Not in this current fiscal year.
But you know, the Board of Ed is thinking of something around $8 million as a top number to finance the HVAC at Baldwin and Jones.
Correct.
And will we be able to realize some of that money through this contract soon? I mean,
No,
this year?
There is a possibility of going back to Johnson Control and see if this can be added to scope. However, at this point, it does not is not within
so
the
it's
scope
outside
of the project that
Yep.
we currently are engaged in. So,
Yeah, just to be clear, yeah, there are big projects that we're looking at, but remember, it's energy performance contract, so just because it's an HVAC project does not mean that
It's
that
energy.
HVAC project for
Right.
3 million, 5 million, 10 million, whatever that, whatever it ends up being, is an energy performance contract scope of work. It's only those portions that will give you the energy performance.
So some
So
of
it's
it
the
will.
equipment, most of it is actually the equipment and the method, but it's not the labor, it's not the materials, it's not replacing ceilings if you've got to put new ductwork in. So there's a lot of items that are not included in it. So that's where you could add items, but it's more, peeling off aspects of it versus the whole entire project. Okay. Anything else under old business? New business? Public forum? And with that, I would like to, it is that time of year. Happy holidays to the entire board, to the audience. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. I think we're in night number 7, right, of Hanukkah. So
We're getting there.
And Merry Christmas to you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you very much. Happy holidays to everyone.
And all
So
the board members.
with that, yes, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.